Hi, welcome. I'm Deborah Vankin. I'm a features writer for the LA Times, and it's my great joy and pleasure to be chatting today with Annie Korzen, who is an old friend of mine. Hey there, old friend of mine, and also has been an inspiration to me and to so many audience members across her many different career iterations, from Seinfeld, being a series regular, to a stage storyteller at places like The Moth, to becoming a TikTok sensation in her mid 80s most recently, and also authoring a new book called The Book of Annie. What else would it be called? Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Humor, heart, and chutzpah. That covers the gambit. Hey, Benny, I see Annie's fabulous husband in the background walking past. He's an artist. He's responsible for those colorful paintings. They're a creative power couple. Anyway, Annie, my first question for you, what I wanted to ask you is about the book. The book has a really specific tone. I was rereading
you mean
parts of it last
book?
night. That book, The Book of Annie.
Oh, look at that.
The book of you, all about you.
Yeah.
This is your favorite conversation to have. Conversation
That's
all
right.
about you.
That's right. I love talking about me. That's how I got onto TikTok, because I love talking about me.
We're going to get to that in a sec. Yeah. We're going to get to that. But I did want to ask you about, I was super curious about the tone of the book is very casual and informal and funny, almost as if you're having a conversation with a friend and you're kind of whispering sort of snarkily at times into our ear. And I wanted to read just one line from that to give you an example of what I'm talking about. It's an essay about motherhood. And in it, you know, it's poignant like so many of your essays, and it's funny like all of your essays. And you say things like, here's the real truth about childbirth. Here's the real truth about the miracle of childbirth. It's a miracle that anyone who's been through it is willing to ever do it again. And
I'm laughing. Wow, that's witty. I think that's really funny.
As long as you think it's funny, hey. But my question for you is, take us behind the scenes. Like, what's it like to write this? Did it just kind of roll off the tip of your tongue as the tone suggests? Or did you write and rewrite at a desk every day very diligently? Or did you just sort of blurt it all out into a recorder? It's so casual and informal. Take us behind the scenes as to how you wrote the book.
That's an interesting question. Having that conversational, intimate tone is something I've always aspired to. And it has taken years and years of work. I have worked at it. I've decided that's the kind of writer I want to be. I want people to think that I'm talking to them. I'm basically a storyteller, as you say, with The Moth and spoken word events. And that skill, I had an instinct for it, but I also had to learn it. I also had to work on it. And so I look very carefully at what I write. And if it sounds too literary or too prosy or too academic, I scratch it out and start again. I want people to hear my personal voice. I'm aggressive enough to think that my personal voice is worth something.
It is. I mean, it's super unique, and it's, like I said, it's funny. For anyone who hasn't read the book, they're personal essays that span portraits of Annie's neighbors in the Hollywood area to poignant essays about childbirth and the miracle of childbirth and the terribleness of childbirth, to her career. I mean, it's all there.
I have to add something to that because it brings up a problem I have in my career. I like describing them as humorous essays. And when I say that brings up a problem, I never know how to define myself. I'm funny. I want to be funny. I want to get laughs, but I'm not a comic. I'm not a stand-up, because stand-ups just go for the laugh. I want to dig a little deeper than that. And I'm not what's the other word? There's a stand-up that's,
you consider yourself
a humorist, yeah. But the problem with humorist is nobody really knows what that is. It's not a profession that the last one, the famous humorist was Mark Twain. And as I say in the book, he was pretty good. He's the one who said, the older I get, wait a minute, what is it? The older I get.
Let's see if I have it here.
Oh, it's something like the older I get, the easier it is to remember things that never happened or something like that. I mean, so somebody just gave me an idea of what I am and am I pronouncing this correctly? comedic, is it comedic or comedic?
Oh,
I never
wow.
know.
I've actually never heard that before. I was going to
Really?
ask
Well,
what you
I'm going to say
consider.
comedic. I'm a comedic storyteller. That's basically what I do. I mean, of course, yes, I'm an actress and all that stuff, but I'm a comedic storyteller. So the book is a connection of comedic stories, even though, as you pointed out, some of them might deal with really serious topics like almost dying or whatever, you know.
And we'll get to those. One, I read this book ages ago, and then I reread parts of it this week. And one of my favorite essays in the book is about it's about the book really sings whenever you're talking about your son or your grandson, Max. And there's a essay in here that talks partly about how you never wanted grandkids. You're like an accidental grandparent. You also
Right,
never in your life wanted or sought out an interracial romantic relationship or
right,
relationship, an
right.
intimate one. And yet you got both in your grandson. And the essay is really heartwarming. It's about how
Well,
you
the thing
sometimes get what you
is,
didn't know you wanted.
well, it's funny. You're bringing up actually one of the themes of the book, which is you do not know what's going to make you happy. Everybody has this scenario. If I had this, if I had that, if I didn't have this, and guess what? They are illusions, as the Buddhists would say. I guess I don't know that much about Buddhism. All you have to do is accept everything and then see what happens. So yes, I did not want to be a grandmother. My son was 45 and his wife were 45 when they became parents. I thought it was too old. I didn't want to lose
They
being the
adopted,
center of
right?
their attention. And they adopted, a black baby, and I was against that because I thought this poor kid. He's not only going to be Jewish, he's going to be black. He's going to have two strikes against him. Who wants to do that to an innocent child? And so I was against the whole thing in every way. The baby came, and I can tell you, and I'm just saying this is just a fact. The child happens to be the most beautiful, brightest, most sensitive child in the history of the universe. And that's it. That's just,
But you're not
giving you
biased,
the
but really,
facts.
objectively
No,
speaking,
but that's it. So in other words, everything I didn't want happened, and everything that happened gave me a lot of joy. So you just can't predict life. You just have to be open. One of the themes is I say to everything, yeah, why not? That's how I got into TikTok. Yeah, why not? I don't regret anything I've ever done, including the bad things that I've done, the mistakes I've made. I only regret things I never did. I never learned how to ride a bike. I never learned how to swim with my head underwater. I regret those things. I wish I had.
it's underrated. Trust me. I belong to a public pool. I used to swim in Echo Park, and I would swim with my head
Oh,
the sinus infections all the time. Anyway, um,
oh, good. You're
so
making me feel better now.
saying yes really resonates
Yeah.
through. It really runs through
Yes.
all the essays, and that's how
Yeah.
you got into Seinfeld. I know from having spoken with you previously about
Yes.
it. Tell us about that yes story.
Well, I was an unknown bit player with almost no career. And there was this new show that no one had ever heard of. And my agent called and he explained that a better known actress in his office had turned it down because she said, oh, it's just a couple of lines. It's too small for me. And I said, well, yeah, why not? My usual mantra. And I came in and I didn't know what the show was. I just had a couple of lines. And when we watched it, when it aired, my husband said, I don't get it. It's not about anything. Now he watches at least 2 or 3 episodes a night. But anyway, I did not know, that the show would become a global viral phenomenon. B, that my role would recur. So I have several episodes in which I play Doris Clompus down in the condo in Florida. My husband Jack is always fighting with Jerry's father. So I'm in some of the classic episodes, the Pen, the Cadillac Rankos, and they gave me a second character. So I'm an obnoxious airline passenger because obnoxious characters are my specialty for some strange reason. So the thing that I said, yeah, why not? And plus, by the way, association with that show changed my standing in the industry. If you've been a recurring on Seinfeld, it gives you a certain, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cachet.
credibility. Yeah. And
Cachet,
so
yeah.
that changed things in my career. So now I'm quite known. I'm still a bit player, but I do them more often and I'm
What
recognized.
what came after immediately because of Seinfeld, having had that cachet? Was there anything in particular that came right after
Uh,
that wouldn't have
I
otherwise?
don't really remember. It was, my career has progressed very slowly. Now I'm 85, right? And some people are overnight successes. It happens young and it happens fast and I hate those people. I'm the opposite. I have been a long-term, slow-moving failure in every aspect of my professional career, both as an actor and a writer and a storyteller. And
You're
it's
a
only
fine wine.
now
You are a fine wine.
that I'm a fine one. But through all kinds of strange and unexpected and accidental occurrences, right now I'm busier than I ever have been, and I'm more respected than I ever have been professionally. I get a different kind of, how shall I say? Uh, Now when I go into audition, casting directors kind of treat it as if they're honored that I'm there. I'm there.
Wow.
I haven't gotten that. I haven't got that. But that's, and a lot of things in my life. Things are happening for me now that have not happened in all my life. So I've been a slow learner. I've been slow.
Well, you would say a late bloomer.
Yes,
I
that's
would
right.
say a fine wine, or somebody just hitting its stride. But since you mentioned age and time, and it's something
Yeah.
that also is recurring through many of our conversations. What's it like to be a woman of a certain age in Hollywood, an ethnic woman in Hollywood, Jewish woman in Hollywood?
Yeah.
What has been your experience around that? And is that
Uh,
for women?
in Hollywood, there are two different things I'll tell you about. One is Hollywood and one is TikTok. In
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, being an ethnic looking woman like I am is terrible because I'm not considered attractive. If a call went out today for an attractive older woman, nobody would call me. I'm not what Hollywood considers attractive. I'm too ethnic looking, too Jewish looking, blah, blah, blah. And as far
I
as
would
being
disagree, but
old,
beautiful.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I've been told that. So I've been told all my life that I'm not good looking. And so I accepted that. Eventually you begin to believe what people tell you about yourself. And so I've always been in a very, very limited category in Hollywood. What can I say? And as far as being older, well, I'll tell you one good part of the thing. I was just in a movie called Thelma. Have you seen that yet?
I haven't seen that.
It's
Is it
fun.
out?
It's a lot
Is
of
it out
fun.
in
Oh yeah.
theaters? Okay.
Well, it was out in theaters, and I guess it'll start streaming soon. It got wonderful reviews. It did very well. Well, the star of that movie is June Squibb. You may remember her from other things. She's a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful actress. June is 95 years old.
Wow.
And a friend of mine, Bunny Levine, has a wonderful scene in it. No, I'm sorry. June is 94. Bunny is 95. So at 85, I was a young kid. And we had Richard Roundtree, the original,
Wow.
what was his name? Oh gosh, I forget. But anyway, so I think something is happening subtly in Hollywood. Have you noticed that lately there have been a bunch of movies starring older women?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's usually Diane Keaton and friends, right? It's Diane
Right.
Keaton, or it's Lily Tomlin, or it's Jane
Helen
Fonda.
Mirren.
Yeah, there's been a whole bunch of Hollywood movies about old ladies having fun, having sex, looking pretty good. And this is a new phenomenon. And I suspect from my experience on TikTok that people are ready to be inspired by older women.
That's wonderful.
Maybe to get wisdom from them, maybe to get inspiration. I think it started with Betty White, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I think she
Golden
started
Girls.
it. So I think it's a new thing. Up until now, I would say this country would certainly, you'd have to call it an ageist country. That
Absolutely.
old, not just old women, but old people are just dismissed. They're not seen.
I would go so far as to say it's sort of like the last, unprotected class. It's sort of like we have.
That's interesting.
We're becoming, much more accepting of many different kinds of people, but not as much older people. But I'm really glad to see
Yeah.
that you point out that it's changing in Hollywood.
I think it is. Well, I think it is, but more than that, it's changing with a very younger generation. Like on my TikTok,
Let's talk
those
about that, about TikTok.
oh, well, it was one of my greatest yeah, why not moments. A 30-year-old friend. Oh, I was complaining to a 30-year-old friend that my storytelling, by the way, when I say storytelling, I've told stories with the Moth. You can hear me on the Moth website. I'll soon be on the Moth Radio Hour again. So I've been a Moth performer for a while now, and I do spoken word shows in LA a lot. And solo shows. I've done solo theater pieces, but I was complaining to this young woman. I said, I really think I have something to offer. I really think I have things to say that people would appreciate, but I don't know how to find a larger audience. Maybe I should go on Instagram or put little clips. And she said, no, no, no. Instagram is so toxic, so last century. You belong on TikTok. Mm. And I told her she was crazy. And she said, trust me, you will go viral. And so I said, yeah, why not? And so we did it. And now I have over 400,000 followers.
You're like an influencer, yeah.
Yes. I'm always embarrassed by that word, but yes, I am considered an influencer. Too bad I can't influence my son or my husband to do what I want, but I am considered an influencer. Now, this much younger, non-Hollywood generation, they tell me that I'm beautiful. They tell me that I'm glamorous, that I've got style. They like my hair. They like my lipstick, blah, blah, blah. I've never gotten compliments like this in my life. Mm-hmm. So this is a whole new thing for me. So it is interesting how one of the pros, and there are several, but one of the pros of living to my age is that I'm now getting respect for things that I never did in my life.
That's really heartwarming. Why do you think, your audience on TikTok is mostly Gen Z, really young?
I thought so, but then there are also some over 40s. I do have more older people. It's the Gen Zs that stop me in the street, but you're
Absolutely.
right. It's a large amount of them are Gen Zs. Yeah.
And just to give people an idea, we've been to lunch and, fans will stop you all the time. The waiter will stop you, come running for an autograph. They are over the top excited to see you. You're my hero. You're my queen. Like the things that they say. So my question
I love it. And I love it because I'm an attention whore. I'm an actor. The more applause, the more love I can get. I guess makes up for love that maybe I didn't feel in an earlier life.
Well, it's really wonderful to see from the sidelines as I have. But my question for you is, why do you think that you resonate so profoundly with the young Gen Z crowd?
I've asked them the same question because I wasn't sure myself. And the answer I always get, and maybe you can explain what you think this means, they say, because you're authentic. And what does that word mean? That I'm honest, that I speak my truth?
Absolutely.
That I say things the way I see them, even though they might be breaking or defying norms or defying traditions in some way. And that brings me to something else, which you've heard me say many times, Deborah. I'm sorry to put you through this again, but you signed up for this.
It's always interesting. I like hearing it. It's always new.
Well, all of my life, all my life, I have been criticized for being too talkative, too opinionated, too blunt. And I've always apologized for it. I was told that those were not attractive qualities in a woman, right? Now, on TikTok, I am being as talkative and opinionated and blunt as I can be. And I'm being loved for it. I'm being celebrated for it. And so what I want to say, it just brings me to another theme of the book, which is that you should never be imprisoned by other people's negative opinions of you. You have to know who you are, and you have to be who you are with pride. I mean, unless you're Adolf Hitler, you know what I mean? But if you're not harming anybody, do not apologize for who you are and your eccentricities. You might find people who will appreciate you for those same what other people see as faults. And I think That's a really important lesson to share.
Do you think that the technology platform of TikTok specifically really accentuates that part of your character, or that authenticity, as opposed to, say, Instagram or being live on the stage?
I don't know. Well, Instagram, I've never understood it. I don't use it because to me, Instagram is have pictures, and I'm not a visual person. I want words. So I don't get Instagram at all. People posting pictures of their cats and their vacation. I don't know. I'm not
But
interested in
as
that.
compared to like the live storytelling stage, like the moth or
Right. I'm a storyteller. I want to talk to people, and TikTok is a place to talk to people. It's a
It's
perfect place to
interesting.
talk to people. And it's changed. When I first started, it had to be under 60 seconds. So that was a challenge to say what I had to. Now they want longer form, which is easier for me because I'm a blabbermouth. I don't like this.
Well, how do you create for TikTok? You know, what do you do? Do you get up in the morning and just wing it, or do you create like 10 episodes at once and then you roll them out over the week? How do you work?
Well, right now, Benny, my husband, shoots them, and we shoot about 5 or 6 at a time. And then I post one in the morning and one in the afternoon. But I never write them. We never edit them. We never retape them because I want it to feel, as you said, conversational and spontaneous. So whatever comes out, comes out. All I do is I keep a list of general ideas. Like today, I want to talk about how the weather on the news, they never talk about the actual weather. They talk about the weather that might or might not come. Have you noticed that? A storm may hit Florida. This say might. So you don't know. I mean, it's the news. The news shouldn't be about guesswork. So that was just a small little TikTok that I did the other day. It was just a thought that flashed into my mind that maybe I try to find things that other people will relate to. Maybe they've had the same thought. Maybe they've had the same feelings. And then when we talk about more serious things like mothering or marriage or dating or whatever, maybe people have experienced it, or maybe I will tell them something to inspire them.
That's interesting. It brings me back to the book, because it's occurring to me for the first time that you have little TikToks throughout the book. So the book is not only essays, but in the margins of the book, there are
Little
these
sidebars,
little sidebar sentences. And it says something like the motherhood, the miracle of childbirth, which I previously mentioned,
right.
but also another of my favorites, I always cite it, is the one about being on an airplane. You say, you know, my favorite sound is not a gentle summer rain or the sound of a baby cooing. My favorite sound is that ding on an airplane when the seatbelt sign goes off, you know, and they're
right. So if I
appear,
say something like that, my hope is that that's going to be universal. Oh my God, I'm the same way. Oh my God, she's saying what I think. Because I think for the most part, if you share your own truths, about your feelings, about your reactions, you know, that about your vulnerabilities, things that you're afraid of, or things that you're proud of. I mean, I think that although I guess I don't talk too much about things I'm proud of because that would be like bragging. But if you share your vulnerabilities, your fears, and your hopes and your anxieties, there will be millions of other people who will feel the same thing.
Absolutely.
You know,
I find that as a writer as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't mention anything about use a writer, by the way. You know, Deb is a highly respected journalist at the LA Times.
This is all about you, though, this conversation.
Well, I just want people to know you're not just some dame I picked up in the street.
I would have come along with you anyway if you picked me up in the street.
Excuse me, miss, would you mind?
I would have come. I would go anywhere with you. But I do find that when I write, most of what I do is third-person journalism, research, reported pieces. But when I do write first-person columns, they especially resonate. And I think for the reasons that you say. But back to you. You talk about pride and not wanting to talk about what you're proud of. But it begs the question. I'm curious, what are you most proud of? I mean, you've done so many different things in so many different mediums. Is there one thing that really rises to the top that you are truly just really proud of?
Yes. And I've never been asked this question before. And it surprises me that I have a very easy answer. I'm proud of my stubbornness because I don't give up. And I have been through so much rejection. When I started storytelling, my dream was to perform with the Moth on the Moth main stage, not in a slam, not in a contest. If those of you who don't know what the Moth is, you can go to themoth.org. It's the primary global storytelling organization. And they do shows. They do big shows all over the city, actually all over the world, but I mean all over the country. And my dream was to be a Moth main stage storyteller. And I had a contact, and every year if I would perform in LA in a storytelling show, I would send the Moth a video saying, "Hi, here's my new story. Hope we get to work together soon." And occasionally I would get a thanks for submitting. Please keep submitting. Okay. This went on a couple of times a year, and I'm not exaggerating this, for 9 years.
Wow, I didn't know this part.
9 years with no response. And finally I said to Benny, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's too painful. I've tried it. I've done it. And I may have to stop. Clearly they're not interested in me. Right. And I'm serious now. The very next day, I got a call from New York. "Hi, Annie. This is Catherine at the Moth. Thanks so much for your patience."
Wow.
She said,
9 years worth.
we'd like to invite you to perform with us at the Schubert Theater in Boston and St. Louis and Berkeley and LA. And we want you to be on our radio hour. We want you to be on our website.
Wow.
And so after I started working with them and I got friendly with them, and now we're all the best of friends, I asked one of them, I said, "What took so long for me to get booked?" And she said, "Oh, you got better." So that was a big learning. And so all those 9 years that I was submitting, it's true. I was working on my craft, like I said, trying to find that narrative voice that's personal and conversational, and trying to find what worked and what. So that when I say, so your question was, what am I most proud of? I guess I would have to say that I'm stubborn, that I knew I had something to offer, and I just kept plugging.
That's great. I love that. I haven't heard that story before, and I find that really inspiring.
Also, I think that, failure is an interesting subject to me. I'm so used to failing. It's just part of my life. Every actor has a steady diet of failure and rejection. That's what we live on. You do an audition. It's really good. You're really perfect. And they give it to someone else. But failure is also a great learning op. And so when I fail at something, after the initial heartbreak, I start to think, why didn't that work last night? What was wrong with this? What didn't the blah, blah, blah? And I think we've come away. I think now we live in such a success-oriented society that, I don't know, people see failure as like the end of the world. It's not. It's part of the human experience. You take it, you deal with it, you accept it, and you move on. Either you get better, or you think, well, maybe this is not what I should be doing. Maybe I fail because I don't enjoy this that much. Maybe I'm a bad lawyer because I hate the law.
That's really, really good advice. And it leads me to a question about an essay in your book. You joke, and it's one of the more serious essays. You joke about initially failing as a mom and how you worked through that experience and eventually became the best mom ever. And you have the best relationship with your son of any mom in the history of the world, as you said.
That's true.
Tell us that.
It's
story.
Funny that you should bring up that story, because I've just heard from the Moth, and that their version of that story, it's not the same one that's in the book, is going to go on the Moth radio hour.
Oh, wow.
Just let me know. I'm very excited about that.
I can't wait to hear that. Well, tell us if you don't mind sharing it, because it's very personal, but it's
I won't tell you the whole story, but I will tell you that I was totally unprepared for motherhood. I'm an only child. I'd never seen a newborn baby. I had my child in Denmark, which was a big mistake. I had no one familiar around me. I mean, I had my husband's family, but I didn't have my own personal team of friends and family behind me. And I had a total nervous breakdown. I felt I wasn't a good mother. I didn't understand how to nurse. I didn't understand how to do anything. And I was exhausted. And I was crying all the time. And the way they dealt with that was they locked me up in a mental institution. So I was in that mental institution in Denmark and then brought to New York, where I went into Mount Sinai. And so the first 3 or 4 months of my son's life, of my baby's life, I was locked up. And as you say, what happened since then is that I've become the world's best mother. And you can ask my son. My son and I are very close. We talk all the time. We see each other when we can. And what I realized, and the big mistake there was I blamed myself because I felt other people were blaming me for what was going on, that I felt so helpless, that I felt so incompetent. No one said, go to bed, we'll bring someone in to help and teach you to take care of the baby until you feel up to it. And that's really all I needed. I needed a nursemaid. It's an old-fashioned word. Now, of course, if you have a mom who lives nearby, you know what I mean? But I was just on my own, not feeling I could handle that tremendous responsibility that had just been handed. And also, postpartum depression is largely physiological. The hormones in your body are in all kinds of,
it's a very real physiological.
It's a real, and they don't teach it in medical school or not much. Really, no one knows what to do about it. And what to do about it is to be reassuring and instructive and understanding and patient. Okay, you can't do this. You can't breastfeed. We'll use formula. You can't, here's how you feed the baby. Here's how you bathe the baby. If you're not up to it yet, we'll get someone, or we'll bathe the baby until you're up to it. Just get yourself better, get yourself healthy, because eventually it does happen. Mm-hmm. It does. You come out of it.
There's a funny aside in the book where you talk about how you were in a mental institution or an institution in Denmark, and how difficult that was. And then you relocated to a hospital in New York where you were surrounded by, there was a group therapy, and you were surrounded by.
I felt right at home.
You felt right at home.
I loved it. Right. My roommate was married to a famous theater critic, and there was a gay guy on the floor who was obsessed with Judy Garland movies. So after Denmark, I thought, oh my God, thank you. Finally, my kind of people.
And you began to feel more like yourself, and you slowly Benny was really there for you. Yeah.
But, like everything else, like I said before, I think the whole problem was that I believed other people's opinions of me, that they made me feel I was not doing the job right. I was not a good, there was something unnatural about my feelings of uncertainty and of fear.
Throughout the book, you give a lot of advice. You share a lot of advice through these stories. In this conversation, you're lending a lot of wisdom and advice. On your TikTok, you give a lot of pearls of wisdom and advice. Is there anything that you've received as an artist, any advice that someone's given you that has really helped you or illuminated things for you?
I have to think about that. I actually, what's that line? Something about you didn't fall from a coconut tree. Nobody goes anywhere alone. No one accomplished it. There's a famous line. It was actually about Woody Allen. I think it was in a documentary I saw about Woody Allen. At one point, they're saying something, or they're talking about his accomplishments, and his mother says to him, just remember, you didn't get here by yourself. Nobody gets where they go by themselves. Mm-hmm. And I've been very fortunate. I've always been in communities of like-minded people and like-minded artists. So there's a storytelling community, there's an acting community, I don't have that much of a TikTok community, but I do have a few. And we all inspire each other all the time. And at one point, I was in a writer's group, and I think what happened was, I don't remember quite how it happened. I had a piece that wasn't working. No, I was working on a solo show. There was a piece of the show that wasn't working, and to me, it was very important. Mm-hmm. I wanted to keep it, and it wasn't working, and somebody said, Annie, the show is great. This piece is great. It's not working. try putting it in another place. And that was astounding because we forget how important editing is. And as soon as I found the right place for it, it became the big piece in that show. So just because something isn't working doesn't mean that it's bad. There may be something else, like, for example, the placement. But anyway, it was being in a writer's group that gave me that idea. Like even when I was writing the book, I was thinking that real estate thing where they say location, location, location. A lot of things have to do with their placement. And when you write a book, I was faced with that was quite challenging. What story goes first? What section? How do you set this up? These are things writers have to think about all the time.
Structure.
I mean, writers of anything, also not just book writers, screenwriters. And when I teach storytelling, which I do, I teach storytelling. Storytelling, when you're telling a story, what's important? What goes where?
And the opposite question, in addition to a piece of advice that you've gotten that's really helped you, the opposite, is there anything in your career in the different iterations that has held you back, either within yourself or you talked a little bit about societal pushback, but is there one thing that's really kind of held you back?
Well,
because you're so resilient.
It's not, well, as I say, it's my look and my New York urban quality. Takes me out of the running for a lot of roles I would like to do. And I've tried to work on my speech, but I often forget to remind myself. I just had an audition where the part, what the woman was talking about, I could easily do. It was a woman who was trying to cancel a subscription on a newspaper. She can't figure out how to do it. Well, I can relate to that, you know. But my impression was it was a small town, and I forgot to work on my speech beforehand because I sound New Yorkie. And when I audition, I have to work. I often should try not to sound New York. Sure, hi, I'm there. Yeah, I'm from the Midwest, and sure, I really like what you're doing. You know, but to me, that's as difficult. It's more difficult actually than a foreign accent. And I'd had a hard couple of days, and I was tired, and I didn't work on that. And when I sent the audition in, and I looked at it, I thought, not good enough. Not good enough. You always actually, it's an actor friend who inspired me on this. Some people think an audition is just an audition. It's not. An audition is a full performance. You have to give 150% at an audition. It's not just a tryout. You have to come in and own the part and own the material. And you can't just say, oh, I'll give them an idea of what I can do, and they'll understand that, then we'll work on it.
Did you study acting? Like, you know, when
I did.
Where did you study act? Because you know some of the
William Esper. He taught a lot of. He taught, like my friend Patty Heaton, who was the wife in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh yeah.
She was in my class, and Richard Schiff, and a lot of actors who work all the time. Yes, I did study. I never studied writing, but I've been in writers' groups. I never actually. No, that's not true. I once took one of those screenwriting classes, and I'm not really a screenwriter. I've done it, but it was good just to get an idea of story structure, what a story has to consist of. Because
you're a natural storyteller.
Well, thank you. That's because I like to talk about myself. Ask me my hobby. My favorite hobby, talking about myself. So that's what I do. That's what I do in the book. I talk about myself.
Well, that's kind of my next question, because we've talked about the book, we've talked about TikTok, we've talked about storytelling. Tell me a little bit about your life outside of work. Like, what does your life look like day to day, week to week? You know, what do you do for fun? What do you do at night? What does life with Benny look like in LA? Tell us something we don't know.
Well, you know, some of this is problematic because Benny and I are such different people. We don't like the same foods. We don't watch the same TV programs. So I have to coordinate between what I want, what my husband wants. I'm very social. I'm happiest. If you ask me what makes me happiest, I would say sitting at a dinner table, eating and drinking, either with family or with friends. I think that's my most blissful moment.
Preferably a group conversation where you're the topic of conversation.
Exactly. You've been to my parties where I make
Yeah.
everybody talk. I say, this is one table, one conversation, mostly about me. Because I don't like a table where you sit and like there are 12 people at the table and there are 3 or 4 different conversations going on. I don't like that. I like a group thing. So I do love a social life, and I've learned at my age, unfortunately, I'm losing a lot of people, and I do talk about loss.
Mhm.
Uh, and how do you deal with loss? How do you deal with losing parts of your history? That's pretty challenging. And of course, the answer is you create more history and create more contacts. That's why I have young friends like you,
Like me,
because
yeah.
you know, um, and um, and I am a TV addict. I binge watch from, I would say, like maybe 10 at night till 1 in the morning. I love
Same,
television. I
same.
love
What are you watching right now? What are you binging?
something that's really bad, actually, but I can't resist certain. I think it's called A Perfect Couple.
Oh yeah, I
Nicole
saw an
Kidman.
ad for that. Hmm.
Very good cast. The writing, it's just like a melodramatic, soapy. It's stupid, but it's fun, and it's mindless entertainment. Watching very rich people in their villa in Nantucket. There's a murder and a lot of sex, and it's silly. I'm a little ashamed of myself, but I mean, the great shows. I mean, I love The Bear.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm watching. I just started this incredible documentary about David Chase, who created The Sopranos. It's
Oh,
unbelievable because it's not just an interview with him. It cuts between him and his story and his life, and cuts from the actual show, not only from the show, but speaking of auditions, auditions from the show,
oh wow. I'm gonna
including of
check that out.
people who didn't make it. People, I mean, I'm amazed that they got permission. I don't know if I want to be seen as the actor who auditioned and didn't get the part. These are actual audition tapes.
Yeah,
And you
that's
see
really cool.
James Gandolfino's audition. I mean, it is absolutely fascinating.
What's it
I
called?
think uh, it may just be called David Chase and The Sopranos, something like that.
Do you ever watch
Uh,
something on TV where you just think, oh, it resonates in your gut? I wish that I had been on that. I wish that would have been perfect.
all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that happens. That happens to every actor. I have that. I have that. Also, I'm a very jealous person. I mean, I
Are you?
really want everything. Yeah, yeah. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. And so, whenever something happens that clearly says it's not happening, uh, I, you know, I get annoyed. Why not me? Why aren't I there?
Yeah. I think we all
And
have a
I feel that everywhere.
tinge of
When
that.
I watch the Oscars, when I watch the Tonys, I think I should be in that audience. I belong there.
Well, what is next for you creatively? What's on the horizon? What are you in the middle of? And what is
Uh,
the next step?
I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements, which I like. They've been about the book. Well, actually, you just did one with me. But then I have some ideas for other topics.
Like what?
I have a friend, as a matter of fact, I think I sent you this, and I don't think I heard back from you. I have a friend, because we already have a booking. We have interest in a booking for this. I have a friend who's very religious. He's very spiritual. I am
Mm.
not. And we've been talking for a long time on different subjects where his point of view and mine, we call ourselves the believer and the cynic, or it's like a believer and a
Yeah.
cynic walk into a bar, that kind of thing.
I love that
And
title. Yeah.
yeah, and we want to just talk to you, to share we want to show how people who are not at all alike can still be loving and respectful to each other. So you have this extremely religious person and this extremely not religious person. And yet, how do we connect with our differences?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm looking forward to that. We're putting together a package of I like speaking engagements and I like teaching too. And I forgot. I didn't even know if I
Yes.
told
Yes.
you. I'm going to be teaching where you teach. I'm going to be
You're going to teach
teaching
at Emerson?
at
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, we're talking about
yeah.
Emerson College in Los Angeles has a campus here, and I teach there. What are you going to be teaching?
I only teach one subject.
Mhm.
writing and performing the personal humorous essay. That's what I teach.
Wow. When do you
So
start?
it's not going to be a full course. It's just going to be a 3-week thing, 1 day a week for 3 weeks. And we'll see how it goes. But I love teaching. A lot of performers I know teach.
I
You
love
get
that. I
the
want to
same
take
thing
that
out of
class.
teaching. Oh, well, yeah, I'll give you you could come in and
I'm going to audit that class.
and
When does
audit.
it start?
I forget, in October sometime. I think it's Wednesdays at 6 in October, something like that.
We don't
Uh,
we don't have that much time left. I promise to keep it to
oh,
about 45 minutes. So I want to ask
okay,
you one last question. Because
okay.
it's Book Fest and because we're focusing on the book this time, I want to bring it back to that. It's so
And you know
varied.
what? I want to say something else. I also
Yes.
coach storytellers privately. I think people should know that. You can get in touch with me if you want private coaching and storytelling. That's something I love doing, and I'm really good at it.
I bet. I bet it's probably really fun too to
Yeah,
take
yeah.
that with you. Um, the book is so widely varied in what it covers. You know, they're just entertaining, funny, poignant essays about everything from loss to life with the sort of through line of saying yes, as you say. Do you have a favorite chapter in the book? Is there one that it's just you always go back to that
Uh,
you're really proud of and that if you could reread
I
one?
don't know, but I'll tell you, I, I like the categories that I talk about. I talk about travel and
Mm,
food and restaurants and thrifting. Thrifting is a big thing.
mm-hmm.
Nothing I see, nothing I wear, nothing you see behind me has ever been bought retail. And I talk about lifestyle. Oh, and I talk a lot about Denmark. My husband is Danish. So I talk about a lot about Scandinavia. So yes, it's a variety of things. I can't say that I have a favorite. No, off the
Well,
top of my head.
everybody should pick up a copy of the Book of Annie, the book of all about you, Annie. Humor, heart, and chutzpah from an accidental or maybe not so accidental influencer from the story that you told us about how you intentionally went about it, but nonetheless you became a TikTok influencer in your 80s. And I thank you all for joining us for this conversation. Enjoy the rest of Book Fest 2024, and we'll see you next time.